In a world where conversations often skim the surface, what if a simple game could guide us into deeper, more meaningful connections? Welcome to Exploring Consciousness. And today we have with us Sam Sokol, the visionary behind the Graticube, a game that is not just about gratitude, but about transforming the way we communicate and connect. Whether you are seeking to enhance relationships, foster team cohesion, or embark on a journey of self-discovery, this episode will unveil how a game can be the catalyst for profound change. Sam, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Elena.
Could you share with us the story behind the Graticube?
Yes, thanks for your question. The way that Graticube came to be is partly from years of experience with experiential learning and gamified education, where people would go through an experience as opposed to maybe reading in black and white in a book and taking notes in that way, but to actually completely immerse themselves in experience. So that was my background, is my background. And the experience that I had was in a place called Burning Man. It has a sort of a mythological sort of reference in history, and you can look it up, but there's 70,000+ people that all come together for 1 week to express themselves with art and music, take classes, do all sorts of things. And it's known as sort of a crazy environment. And I decided to go to that environment and be silent for a week. So I had a little card in my pocket, and I said, I'm choosing to be silent for this week because for my entire life, I've never stopped talking. So I'm choosing to listen, and if there's something you might choose to share with me, I promise I won't interrupt. And that experience was extraordinary, giving me an opportunity to hear what people really wanted to share and truly listen and hold space for somebody to share what was important to them. And from that, I realized I wanted to share it. I didn't know exactly how to do that, but I thought maybe a game. And instead of telling someone to go be silent for a week in a crazy place, so maybe you'd be willing to play a game that had elements of curiosity, story, gratitude, time, and space.
So that is what inspired you to create this game, which is all about gratitude and connection. So for those unfamiliar, how does the Graticube work?
So here's the game box. This is the second version of the game that we made with Deepak Chopra. So I can tell you a little bit about how that happened when it's time. But essentially, there are different game elements. In the game, you have 3 different cards. So this is so many times when we talk about a game now, people mean a video game, going online to play. This game is something you can play in person with your friends. So these are cards from the game. And each one has, at the top here, a story, right? A story prompt. And this one says, for example, what is something you know you don't know? I think this is a question inspired by some of the work done by Deepak Chopra. And in the game, you would have the opportunity to answer that question. There's no force. You don't have to do anything in the game, but you might answer that question. You'll choose how light or deep you want to go. If you really want to go into a deep place. And along with that card, you would roll the dice. So imagine you have something like this. It says courage here and now.
Can you describe us the dices? We can see
Yes,
one of them has time-related notions and the other one?
So one is time and one is space. This one is space. This has to do with emotional places in which we find ourselves through life. And you'll see some words on here people are scared to talk about. Or it might be emotionally triggering, something like shame or guilt. And while we may not want to live in a place of shame or guilt, often that is a jumping off point for some sort of transformation, some sort of powerful place that we get to because we're catapulting from a place that we don't want to be. And making our way through that is a determination of character, the determination of just like this word here, courage. So if we have the courage to confront some of these more challenging emotions, as we might call them, then we have a chance to get to a new place. This is the time die. Sometime now, never, past, future. and of course, the present. So really, some people would say, oh, that's a negative emotion, and we don't really think of it as a negative. It's really all of these are towards our development as humans into who we want to be. And as you're playing, you have the story card that gives you the prompt, the dice that may give you some context, so courage and now or courage and past, and then two other kinds of cards. This one here for curiosity. As you're playing, someone might offer you a card to want to prompt you a little bit more. This one says, would you be willing to give or receive an outside perspective? So as you're playing, you might say, I'd really like to hear an outside perspective. Please share with me what you have to say. And at some point, you may receive a gratitude card. This gratitude card is meant to be shared when you feel resonant with something that someone has said. When you feel like you really were touched in some way, or maybe you really just want to share how much you enjoyed what someone said.
Wow. And the questions are very interesting questions. You have mentioned now that the game includes time and space and various cards. How do these elements contribute to the overall experience?
Thank you for that question. So it's interesting what happens when we first look at a question, right? So I'll just pick another one. For example, so we say, who do you think could appreciate your appreciation? Which in a way might sound silly, have appreciate and appreciation on the card twice. But the idea here is that you have a moment to be thoughtful, to really drop in and consider that question. Sometimes you may look at the dice, and so if I were to look at the dice and just give them a quick roll, I'd say I've got desire and always, right? So it may be really obvious, desire, always, appreciation, or it might not be. And so I think what happens in conversation, or what happens with this sort of self-inquiry, is that when we give ourselves time, something beautiful can emerge. It's a little bit like tilling the soil. You may look at the ground at first and see nothing. And as you sit there a little longer and sift through it or wait, you may find something beautiful emerges, something you never expected. And so the process of playing the game is an invitation to not only find what maybe is there for you, but if you're playing with 3 or 4 other people, what is there for them? And so it's a sort of alchemy, a combination of the powerful people in the room where you get the best out of that group of people. You get the best out of yourself because there's that moment of inquiry, thoughtfulness, and a really profound and I would say legitimate way of listening to others.
How has the game been received? Diverse settings, from corporate events to personal gatherings.
In personal gatherings, there are a variety of different environments. And really, I would say so often we focus on the content of a moment, but the context of a moment really matters. In something like a corporate event, if you have a corporate environment where people feel very safe and they feel like they can be creative, they can share the best that they have, then it's received very well. If you're in an environment where there's maybe a little fear, maybe you're around that one person you really don't want to share with, then you won't open up. And that's always up to each one of us. There's no force in the game. You're only going to share what you feel that you want to share. So in environments where you feel that you are capable of being vulnerable, when you can trust the people that are playing, which is most often what happens. We see that happens in most times when you come together with other people, you want to be there. I would say that. So if you want to be there, the opening is for sharing what's true for you, and it's life-changing in some cases. I think people will commonly, so I'll facilitate a lot of events. My business partner will facilitate a lot of events. But even when we're not there, which is really the point, that anyone can play this with their friends or their group of people, their family, with their coworkers, or even with a perfect stranger, and still experience something beautiful, because the power is in the connection between humans. The game is a tool for us to connect. It allows us the context of listening and gratitude and sharing. Beyond that, it's the connection between humans.
Can you share some transformative experiences people had while playing the Graticube? Maybe someone having emotional or even spiritual breakthrough while playing the game?
There are a few. I'll share a couple with you, and you'll decide what you keep. You can tell me what you like. Some people ask, can you play this with young people? And my friend has a 5-year-old daughter, and he said to me that they played with her, and she didn't quite yet know what guilt and shame were. She's 5 years old. She'd never learned the concept of guilt and shame. And so they walked through with her what the concept meant, and they offered her a question card from the game, a story card. And she was not yet arriving at an answer, and so her parents were ready to move on. Just, okay, it's okay, maybe you don't know, and that's okay, thanks for trying. And she says, no, I've got something. And it was around guilt and shame. And so in a way, as a parent, you're excited that your child is ready and they have something. But also there's oh my gosh, but it's guilt and shame. What does she have? She's only 5. And she says, well, do you remember when I was 3? And so yes, I remember when you were 3. She said, I came into the house and didn't have my pants on. And I said, well, yeah, we kind of remember that. Sure. She says, well, I told you that I lost my pants, but I lied to you. I said, well, what do you mean? What happened? She says, well, I peed my pants and I threw them away because I didn't want you to know that I'd done that, because that's not what big girls do. And I want to be a big girl. And so imagine for her being 5 years old, for this experience that happened half a lifetime ago. And yet she's having a time to process it at 5, not 25 or 35 or 45, not suppressing that, but having a relationship with guilt and shame where she can recognize, yes, this happened. Yes, I felt that emotion, and I don't have to carry that anymore. So that's a really, I think, beautiful example of what's possible, because there was no judgment from her parents. In fact, those same people, my friends, they said, when we play the game and we talk about these things, we have a great experience listening to each other. When we talk about those same kind of subjects outside of the game, sometimes we fight. But we never fight inside the game. Mm-hmm. So it's curious that when you start the game, there's an acceptance of the rules, that we're willing to listen, and that's a powerful place. Sometimes you may hear something you don't agree with, and yet you have the chance to really listen to it. I have one more example that I'd like to share with you. Sometimes, as a facilitator, when I come into a group, I don't really know the people. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And I remember facilitating for this family. And the family had the older siblings, and then they had married out, so it's their partners coming to play in this game. And one of the ladies, she got a card, and she shared for maybe 2 sentences. All she said is 2 sentences. And everyone playing offered her gratitude cards, and they were so congratulatory. They were so excited for what she shared, and it was true. It wasn't made up, emotion. It was very true. And they noticed me as an outsider and said, well, Sam, you may not know, but she never shares anything. This was really profound. So sometimes we, from the outside, because we're all outside someone else's experience, we don't know what they're really experiencing. And people don't really know what we're experiencing. And that's part of the process of coming together. He said, Sam, you need to know that this was really special for us. And that's sometimes what we need to honor. If we think, oh, I need this person to tell me a lot, right? Maybe that's not what needs to be spoken into at that moment, but appreciating and taking that moment of gratitude to tell someone, I really appreciate you being willing to be open. So there's transformation that may be really obvious and sometimes not, but the willingness to hold space, which is this kind of crazy idea. How do we hold something that we can't see or touch or feel, but that exists? How do we hold space? And the power of listening to someone else allows for extraordinary transformation.
It sounds like a bit of magic behind this game, and the way you describe it, it seems like it's also connecting personally to the person which is playing or to the group which is playing. Would you say that specific questions would go to each one of us, questions that would help us grow, help us bring things to the conscious level, and eventually this would bring us healing?
I think all of those things are true. Sometimes what happens is that people are going through this very busy world that we live in, carrying, I think of it a little bit like a charge. Imagine for a moment that you're a kid and you run across the carpet with your rubber shoes and then you get a little spark with your finger. Have you done that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going through the world, we're accumulating all of this energy in all of these different ways, and we come together with people. And sometimes we don't want to share because we're scared. And so often people are getting interrupted that after a certain point in time, why try to share anything at all? If you're just going to get stepped on every time you go to share something, someone's going to interrupt. Why share anything at all? So there's a certain sense of holding on and not sharing. And when you do that, you hold on to this electric charge, and it can get worse and worse and worse and worse. But when you get to a place where you can be grounded, then that charge can dissipate. It can exit your system in a way that's very peaceful. Or you can bump into somebody like a crash. And that's so often what happens. But when we set the context of listening and being curious and not in a space of judgment, then that charge can be dissipated in a way where we start to open up and see certain connections we can't see on our own. There's a concept of synergy. And synergy is when you get more than just the two parts. So 1 and 1 is not equal 2. 1 and 1 might be 11. And when we do that, we're getting the benefit of the genius that's in each person, right? And you can't experience synergy alone. So the power of coming together, the power of transformation happens when we come together, when we bump into each other in a way that we desire, that we like, that we set the rules for. So if we set the rules of engagement, we're going to beat each other up with clubs. Well, I'm not interested in that game. But if we say the engagement that we want is to come together for exploring what might be there, exploring the you, the me, the other third thing that maybe we can't define. So if that's always there, the magic of the game gets to explore that other thing that's between us and with us that allows us for that growth together in synergy.
It's very interesting. The more we hear, the more interesting it becomes. How do you see tools like Graticube influencing the way we communicate and connect in the future?
I think it would be a lovely world if we started with more listening. An experience for me of having a week of silence. I saw a lot, I experienced a lot, and the world, in a way, sort of begs everyone to be loud, to be expressive, to be bright, to be shiny. And yet what's connecting for us, part of the reason I think that we're all here together bumping into each other, is to learn. And I think tools that allow us to start with being interested. If you think about interested and interesting, so much of the world is clamoring to be interesting, and that's the shininess of it. That's the be big, be bright. And yet, when we choose to be interested, when we choose to listen, there's so much that we can learn. And any opportunity for us to use tools that allow us to be interested and to be open to what's there that we may not see right away, that gives us a chance for transformation, because you already know what you know, and I already know what I know. So it doesn't help me to keep talking about what I know unless you express interest, and that's obviously part of our conversation. But I think that's the key, is to start with being interested in what's around us.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think people today crave for deeper conversations?
I think that there's so much happening that is building that charge in us where we're not getting a chance to release it, from potentially fear, something as simple as I've been interrupted so much in my life, why should I share? That's often a common way that we block ourselves. I think, again, being shut down when people say, oh, I'll listen to you, and then they're looking at a TV in the background, but they've got their phone and they just don't, they're not looking at you. And so it takes a genuine interest in getting to know someone to actually do that, to actually honor the person that's in front of you and recognize that we all have something special to share. If you look at, for example, the way that a lot of information is gathered, we look towards, and not everyone, but I'd say collectively it happens, where we look towards somebody with a massive authority. We say, oh, they're so experienced, they're so knowledgeable, this person's so special, so I'm going to look for that one person. That's a certain kind of thought. And then there's another way to say, the genius is all around you. All of the pieces and parts are around you. It could be your mother, it could be your father, it could be that stranger on the street that you always walk by that you never bothered to ask a question of. So I think all of the elements are constantly all around us and within us, and it's really the opportunity is to listen a little deeper and consider what's in that environment.
In your experience, what is the difference between having fun and feeling connected? And do you think Graticube is offering both of these?
It's a good question, having fun and feeling connected. I think those are kind of sometimes. Think about a time when you felt really happy. It might be right now for the person that's listening to this podcast. It might be that they can remember a time of being really happy. And often you also feel like you're having fun, right? That happiness and fun. And there's a deeper word for that is joy. And Deepak Chopra, when we played the game with him, it invited this question, but the question he got was describe success and invite each person playing to share a sentence of what success means to them. And the dice he rolled, of course, because it's Deepak Chopra, were joy and now. He just happened to roll joy and now. And what he said was that the only measure of success is joy. So if what you're doing in your life, you're not enjoying it, it's probably worth considering how to change that. And instead of thinking, I'm going to follow my bliss, or that I'll be joyful tomorrow, consider what it would mean to be joyful now. And I think at our core, we are playful beings. We love to play. That's inherent in who we are. Look at children on a playground. It's innate. You don't have to set a reminder and say, okay, Timmy, would you like to possibly play from 9:15 to 9:25 on Tuesday? We don't have to schedule that kind of things. Play is spontaneous. Fun can be had at any moment. I think that brings us back to this success in life is being joyful. And by doing that, you have to be joyful in the moment.
So Graticube includes insights from Deepak Chopra. Were there specific moments where his visions transformed how you shaped the game?
Yes, thank you. It's a great question. And when we started into his book, he wrote a book called Abundance. And abundance can be defined in a lot of ways. You might have one person define it by the cars and the houses and the planes and all of these different things. And of course, you might also imagine someone like Deepak Chopra wouldn't define success by things. I've also shared with you a little bit about, success being defined by joy. So that for us was really powerful. When we first heard him say that, my business partner Terry and I, we had a long conversation about the word only, right? The only measure of success. Because it's anytime you generalize, it's possible there's an exception, right? So never say never, right? That's one of our phrases. So thinking about saying, could it be that the only way, and we came to just sort of dissect that ourselves and have a long conversation to say that we accepted that as true. And there were a number of those moments as we were reading through the book Abundance. Another one, the book Abundance, it's funny, when we got the copy, it was a PDF, right? And so we were able to do a word search. We did a word search for the word abundance. What was surprising is that the word abundance doesn't appear very often in the book, which is not something you would expect because you'd think it'd be all over. But that you'd find the word one. What we found to be a word, a repetition of a combination of words was creative intelligence. And the idea of creative intelligence is that we, each one of us, has access to infinite possibilities. Because we have access to infinite possibilities, we are able to use our creative intelligence to then manifest whatever we might choose. And that was a powerful moment of looking at this idea of creative intelligence as infinitely accessible by all people, And so much so that we decided to name our company the Creative Intelligence Agency. So it was profound for us to go through this content. I think there were many aha moments. And when you read a book, it's exciting to share with others. And again, when I had this experience at Burning Man, that was exciting and I wanted to share with others. So for us, it was how do we share this beautiful experience? What if people could dive into and play the whole concept like a book? And the question of abundance and this creative intelligence and how we connect to that inner brilliance. Deepak says that abundance is your birthright. So someone might be walking around thinking, well, scarcity, it's just all about scarcity. The world is about scarcity. So that was another one, that abundance is each of our birthright, and that when we access creative intelligence through being playful and joy, then we get to experience that birthright.
In your eyes, Sam, what is true gratitude, and how does Graticube help people access it in a more embodied way?
Some of the most profound people I know have a gratitude practice. So it's one thing to, for example, you sit down at a restaurant and they bring you your food. Well, where did that food come from? You think about the many hands that were responsible for that chain of events from the very moment. Maybe was there an animal? Did you have chicken? If you had chicken, who cared for that chicken? What were all the conditions that made that possible? What comes into your system in that way? Was it made with chemicals? Was it made in an organic way? But there was a person involved that brought you the food. There was a person that brought the food to make the food in the kitchen. And so I think that when we stop to consider all of the different aspects that come together to make our life so beautiful, it's coming together with that interest in, being appreciative for, and seeing the magic, the very magic, as opposed to saying, oh, it's just food. Imagine if every time you had food, you sat in appreciation for all the different hands that came together, how that might energize not just your physical body, but also your spirit, also your emotions. So I think when we connect with gratitude, we're getting a more full body experience of the beauty of life. And so it's that moment of recognition. And it's the same thing in a person. You see a person, oh, it's just a person, it's just a man, it's just a woman. You start to engage a different part of your brain. Maybe it's that egoic brain, that part of our brain that's just like a computer. But then when we stop and we look into someone's eyes and we appreciate, wow, they have so much experience. They lived a long life. I wonder what that life is like. And then in that moment, when we look a little bit beyond the surface, we see the beauty of life. I think that's the invitation. The invitation with gratitude is to tap into that deeper essence of what makes us special and finding those unique qualities.
What kind of transformation do people experience when they play Graticube constantly?
Wow. I get text messages and video messages and audio messages from play. And I think the greatest thing that we can do is expand our awareness, right? In one way, we think about maybe what's there, what we see. In another way, it's interesting to think, what don't we see? What's right in front of us that we don't see? And so by taking a moment to challenge our awareness, to look in a little deeper, we see more. We see more about our life. We see more about our experience. So Graticube is an opportunity to do that. You could do that yourself. You could read the cards and consider, and every time you roll the dice, it's a different combination of thought. But then when you play with someone else, you have the thought, you have the emotion. There's so much more that we can experience.
Could this game be part of a therapy, education, spiritual retreats?
I think it could be all of those things. Yes. I think that in any moment, the topics, the kind of things that bring us together, the choice of how we want to engage with each other, the answer is yes. And it's transformative when we choose to listen in that way.
If someone is skeptical and says, oh, this is just a game, what would you say?
Well, It's funny because it's so easy to put something in a box, right? And this it's a perfect example. You can look at this, and it's a little bit like judging a book by its cover. You know, it's hard to describe anything to anyone if you only experience it in your mind, then that's very limited. When you take the chance to try something new, you're opening your mind to all sorts of possibilities. And I think you could put anything in a little box. You could judge anything. You could say, "Oh, this games are just for kids." I would ask you to consider what part of you is saying that. And wouldn't it be fun to be a little bit more playful? What could happen if you learned something new? So it's an invitation to learn something new. It's enough that Deepak Chopra thought to play it and thought to endorse it and collaborate with us. So if you have respect for some of these other people, it might just be something to say, I know what I know, but I'm willing to learn something I don't know.
The cube itself, it's such a playful object. Why a cube? Why not cards or something else?
I think for us, the cube was just a way to, it's a building block in your life. It's a little bit of a foundational building block. And it's a playful design. We didn't see any other designs out there that did that. And it works really well. It's something that you can take with you anywhere you go. It's kind of fun to bring to a restaurant, for example. I've taken it with me when I travel on an airplane. And it's typically the kind of thing that people look at and are curious about. So I think it just has a playful exterior and it's inviting. I always wanted whatever we created to be playful and inviting.
What if the most powerful shift in consciousness didn't begin with a practice or a meditation, but with a game? So the greatest journey is the one within. And sometimes that journey can begin with a simple question, can begin with shared silence, or a playful cube that opens hearts. As you've heard today, Graticube is more than just a game. It is a doorway to presence, connection, and a new way of being together. And this October at Exploring Consciousness in Brasov, we're taking that experience to a whole new level. We are going to be playing with up to 300 beautiful souls in one space, weaving a field of gratitude and transformation, one that you have to feel in order to believe. And Sam will be with us, guiding us step by step.
I'm really excited to see you in October in Brasov. And, we've been talking about power of coming together, how 1 + 1 can be more than 2, maybe 1 + 1. In this case is 300 people. If you imagine 300 people coming together around the conscious networking, conscious conversation, and exploring more than just what's inside one person. But imagine the synergy of 300 people all playing together. What might be possible then? What is the alchemy that you could experience in person in that group?
That will be really a very powerful event to participate in. So thank you very much, Sam. Thank you for your presence and all the wonderful insights you shared with us today. And we are going to be looking forward to see you in October. So, are you ready to play?
I'm ready to play.
Okay.
Let's go.
Thank you, Sam.